794 AD, 4688 AM. Viking fleets attack the English town of Jarrow. 795 AD, 4689 AM. Vikings attack the west coast of Scotland and St Columba's Church on island of Iona. 1. Saxons, Vikings and Celts. 798 AD, 4692 AM. Planet Phoenix passed through the inner solar system, completing its 138-year orbit. This was still the Dark Ages, and no records for this year have been found. It may have been too far away to have been seen, meaning Earth was too far along the ecliptic path around the Sun, perhaps on the opposite hemisphere of the Sun when Phoenix passed through. 800 AD, 4694 AM. Pope Leo III of Rome crowned Charlemagne as the first Holy Roman Emperor on Christmas Day. He was the grandson of Charles Martel. At this time, the royal house of Narbonne in the south of France, closely allied to Charlemagne, was regarded as descended from the house of David. This seems to be reflected in the Encyclopaedia Judaica, which states that Narbonne was home to the Jewish kings. This line would produce Godfrey of Bouillon, king of Jerusalem after the First Crusade. Also at this time, the Jewish writer Eldad Hadani collected traditions about the migrations of the 10 tribes of Israel and wrote them on what is known as the Cochin Scroll. Even before his time, Israelite tribes had populated Eastern Europe, Bactria, around the Caspian Sea and Asia as various Scythian peoples. By now, Albinus Alcuin, the Anglo-Saxon scholar, reformed church liturgy and finished his Latin from Hebrew translation of the Book of Jasher. This was the year 1460 since the founding of the Greek city of Byzantium, later to be called Constantinople, where the seat of the Eastern Roman Empire lay. 1. The Merovingian mythos. 2. The Jesus Papers. 803 AD, 4697 AM. Ancient Dutch stories and traditions of a global flood and cataclysm are compiled into the Ura Linda manuscript by Adela, the wife of a chieftain. She stood 7 feet tall. The Dutch stories relate that the Great Flood was actually the final part of a massive cataclysm of stars falling from the sky. 1. Secret cities of Old South America. 804 AD, 4698 AM. A Saxon insurrection protesting Charlemagne's forced Christianity was put down by the Franks. It was the oppression and ceaseless wars of the Franks against their Saxon cousins that planted a deep hatred of Christianity in the hearts and minds of the Vikings. Rumours and reports filtered through northern Europe at the atrocities committed by the Franks against the Saxons in their program to force the Saxons to accept the religion of Charlemagne. 1. The Vikings. 806 AD, 4700 AM. The Chinese incorporate a paper money system. 813 AD, 4707 AM. Al-Mamun begins ruling as Caliph of Baghdad of the Abbasid dynasty. He is a scholar and researcher of scientific, philosophical and religious works of the Indians, Greeks, Romans, Christians and Arabic sages. He developed an acute fascination of the Great Pyramid at Giza, no doubt aware of the many Coptic records about the architectural complex. Also at this same time, the Greek monks Methodius and Cyril evangelized Bulgaria and converted it to Christianity. The King Boris was baptized. The rapid conversion was because these monks translated the Greek New Testament into the Bulgar language. 1. The Albigensian heresy. 814 AD, 4708 AM. On his way back from his 47th campaign and returning from Saxony, Charlemagne and his men saw a comet flash across the sky, perhaps a large meteorite. At the same time, at the palace of Archaix, there were felt earth tremors. Charlemagne was 70 years old and died soon after this. 1. The Spear of Destiny. 815 AD, 4709 AM. The Bishop of Lyon, in an old French manuscript, describes strange pictures appearing in the crop fields that he describes as works of the devil. Aside from the archaic traditions concerning circles created in wheat fields by the fairy folk, and strange lights like will-o'-the-wisps, this is the first written account about the crop circle phenomenon. 1. Crop circles, gods and their secrets. 820 AD, 4714 AM. The Muslim Caliph of Baghdad, Al-Mamun, travelled from Babylonia, Iraq, to Lower Egypt and camped at the foot of the partially buried Great Pyramid of Giza. He employed labourers and promised that inside the pyramid was treasure. There was no apparent entrance to the Great Pyramid, but Al-Mamun knew that the ancient Egyptians and later Romans had access to a secret portal, a heavy stone door cleverly pivoted. This he could not find. His men spent 6 weeks tunnelling through the almost marble-hard limestone. On the verge of giving up their excavation of what was the same as solid rock, a clear thump was heard in the tunnel, and the men renewed their efforts, tunnelling in the direction in which most agreed they believed the sound to have come from. They discovered the descendant passage, which ran about 345 feet from the outside of the pyramid, which had been blocked, and a continuing tunnel under the pyramid plateaus. This tunnel was known to the Egyptians, Romans, and many others. In fact, this is the only architectural feature replicated in all the other pyramids found around the world from Egypt, Libya, and Central and South America. They were all designed with descendant passages and underground grottos. But the accidental discovery of Al-Mamun was incredible, for the thump they heard was a formerly unknown and cleverly concealed prism ceiling block that hid the entrance to the ascendant passage, a tunnel system unknown to all pyramid-building civilizations. This architectural feature of ascendant corridors and chambers in the Great Pyramid of Giza was not copied by any other builders. This means that by the time the ancients explored the inside of the monument and built their own versions of the pyramid, the granite plug prism was in place and the upper tunnels were unknown. The granite plug was one of a series of blockage plugs, and they could have only been dropped into place from above, meaning that much of the Great Pyramid had to have been finished before the plugs could have been slid into place. In CHRONICON, Lost Science of Prophetic Engineering, it is shown that there is a calendrical timeline encoded in the internal measurements of the Great Pyramid, and that the tunnel entrance Al-Mamun discovered in this timeline is exactly at that juncture in the pyramid chronology, identifying the AD year of 820. This is beyond coincidence. The pyramid timeline encoding the exact year that its internal ascendant passage tunnel would be discovered. Al-Mamun found no treasure but had money buried where his men could discover it in compensation for all they did. He may have been the first person to step inside the king's chamber and see the empty sarcophagus since the time of Abraham. He had an appreciation for the sanctity of the site and must have had his men fill the tunnel back in, but they left the entrance to the ascendant passage open, because for centuries afterward no chronicler who had visited the Great Pyramid could find a way inside. Joseph Jockman wrote that when the pyramid was first entered, there were salt incrustations an inch thick. Chemical analysis in modern times showed that some of this salt had a mineral content consistent with salt from the sea. He also wrote that the medieval historian Biruni, writing in his treatise, The Chronology of Ancient Nations, noted, quote, "The traces of the water of the deluge and effects of the waves are still visible on these pyramids halfway up, above which the water did not rise," unquote. In 1899 BC, the delta region of Lower Egypt emerged out of the Mediterranean, and the region was called by the Egyptians the Raised Land. The Giza complex had been under the sea for 340 years exactly, since the deluge. Also in 820 AD, the first recorded Viking raid occurred against the Frankish realm. The Vikings sailed up the Seine River, 13 ships according to the Royal Frankish Annals. 1. The Great Pyramid, Smythe. 2. The Christ Conspiracy. 4. The Vikings.